Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Optimizing the Mobile Video Experience. Before we get started, I would like to review some of the functionality of the platform we are using today to deliver this webinar. We will have a Q&A at the end of the presentation, but you can submit your question at any time by typing it in the Ask a Question box, which appears below the slides. Simply type your question and then hit Submit. In the Resources tab near the top right of your screen, you'll find several resources that you can download, including a PDF of today's slide deck and our just released white paper, also on this topic, called Optimizing the Mobile Video Experience. There are some additional materials on this topic as well, available for your reference. And now with that, I would like to welcome everyone to today's presentation, Optimizing the Mobile Video Experience. Before we get started, our presenters for today's session are Charlie Krause, Senior Product and Solutions Marketing Manager at Limelight Networks, and Mark Mikas, VP Customer Engineering at NPAW. I will now turn today's presentation over to Charlie Krause.
Hi, good day, everybody. So first, just the agenda. So what we want to do is going to go over some market data, just about what's recently going on. At Limelight, we do surveys twice a year on the video market, and I'm going to show some data from the more recent one that we published, which we'll make available to you at the end. We'll talk about workflows, about delivering mobile video, and then very importantly, the types of analytics and metrics you can gather about the performance of it, how the audience is viewing it, how long you're viewing it, et cetera, and give you some best practices. So we'll go through all this stuff, not necessarily in that order. So if this sounds good to you, hang in there with us and let's have some fun. So first, for some data, viewers like watching on mobile. So we watch this every year, and what keeps happening is the combination of smartphones and tablets. Those bars keep growing every 6 months when we do these surveys. So they certainly like to watch certain types of content on mobile. What's important here is the type. So mobile wins overall for in total for watching. But if you get a big sports event, there's still that, and I'm part of this, there's still a lot of people that really like watching a major sport event on a very large screen TV, and I'm right there. But when you're watching reruns of TV shows or short clips, that's really where mobile's really coming in. So there is some sensitivity to what exactly you're watching. The type of video content consumed. So it's funny, when we did this last time, what's conspicuous by its absence on this graph is someone say, where's sports? That's one of the things that we watch a lot. But so movies, TV show, news. So news is always live. Gaming videos will be live. The rest of this is on-demand content. In the most recent survey that we just embarked on, that we don't have the results yet, we thought let's put sports in there, and that'll get a big bar when we have that in a couple of months, and we'll get that out to people. But pretty good mixture and balance of the different types of content that's consumed. What's really important is the length. So a couple of years ago, when we did the first survey, most of the stuff was consumed was fairly short. People would watch a YouTube video, they'd watch short clips, things like that on social media. But what's really grown a lot is long-tail content, so stuff that's more than an hour, which tells me a couple of things. One is the experience on mobile, whether it's a tablet or a phone, is good enough now that people are even willing to watch like an hour or two movie on that. You see it on planes a lot. People have an iPad or something like that loaded up with movies, and they're watching it on a plane. So the long tail content has grown a lot, the over 30-minute, over 60-minute over the past couple of surveys. So I expect that'll continue to grow as well. Now, what frustrates people? So, all is not well. So people have come to expect that mobile video will have the same quality of experience, as they say, just like TV. So it just works, and it's high quality, there's no rebuffering, et cetera. And that's the expectation. So despite all the challenges of delivering over a mobile environment and securing the content and all this stuff, the expectation is that it's perfect. So you can see the number one frustration is definitely the rebuffering. And we'll get into how many of those people will tolerate before they log off, but they don't like to wait for it to start playing. If it's not available and they expect it to be available, it's not good. No, just the quality isn't good. If it's blurry, it's hard to see. All these things are big turnoffs, and people will abandon it fairly quickly if any of these happen. Rebuffering leads to abandonment. So once, twice, shame on me. By the third time, 78% of the audience, if you get your third rebuffer, 78% of the audience, they're gone, and they're not coming back in. So that's one of the most important things you can deal with. A little bit of fuzzy picture once in a while, people will have some tolerance, but if you start rebuffering and the little wheel starts spinning, it's not going to take too much of that before you lose people. So again, there's a sensitivity into the types of content. So if somebody's watching a sports event and let's say it's a nice soccer match and it's exciting and it's in the last 5 minutes, they may not log off just because of a buffering issue then. Once they're engaged with the content, but especially early on in something, if it's a TV thing or a movie and it starts buffering, the expectation is that that's going to continue and they'll probably abandon. So it depends on the type of content, depends on how long they've been engaged with it, and that will matter a lot in terms of their behavior. So what can you do about all this? So there's a lot of choices you have when you're delivering, whether it's live or on-demand video. So we'll start with the live case first. Depending on where your audience is and how they're dispersed and who you have to reach, you have many different options for doing this. But by and large, for most major event, any kind of good-sized event that's reaching a reasonable audience, people are using content delivery networks to do that for a couple of reasons. Some companies are big enough that they can do their own encoding and transmuxing to different formats, and that's not really their issue. But the big issue becomes, how do I reach all those viewers? Because they could be anywhere in the world or anywhere within a country, and it's very difficult to reach all of them without some kind of a purpose-built infrastructure for doing that. So one of the things most major content delivery networks can provide is delivery to pretty much anywhere on the surface of the earth. It varies by content provider. You have to look at their maps of where their pop locations are to see if it's covering where you need to reach. But it's fairly safe to say that the major players, the top few, will have very thorough worldwide coverage of this. For organizations that aren't big enough to have their own encoding, transmuxing, and most of the video management schemes, either because of budget or they don't have the expertise in-house, video services are fairly common across CDN. So what's typically there is lots of different options for ingesting in. So RTMP is a fairly common way to do that, and then it'll be translated down to multiple bit rates. It'll be transcoded into the different formats. So because we're talking mobile, I limited the discussion to HLS and Dash because those are the two formats that typically are used. HDS, MSS, and some others, not so much. So we'll keep it to this. So either, we get content that comes off of, if it's a live sporting event, there'll be those video trucks you see out in the parking lot with satellite up feeds. And so, getting a hold of the content from the downlinks, it can come live off cameras, a lot of different ways it arrives. But CDNs also allow multiple ingest locations. So usually anywhere there's pop locations they can ingest from. So no matter where a live event takes place, you're probably not far away from a CDN ingest point. And so while we're on live, one other thing that's worth discussing is latency. So anybody that watches sports has definitely seen this phenomena of, if you're walking down the street, you're going to go to a friend's house to watch some sporting event, and they're watching it on television. But because you're late, you're listening, you're watching it on a mobile device. You walk in the door, and you don't see anything particularly happening, and just as you arrive, you hear all this cheering going on, and you're watching your screen. You say, "What happened?" Well, the broadcast definitely has a little bit of latency, but it's not nearly as much as the typical latencies that you get when you're viewing online, and especially on mobile. So what the difference is typical for HLS traffic. The chunk sizes that are used is typically, like Apple HDS is about 10 seconds. So chunks are created in real time, and they're delivered, and then they're consumed in real time. And then there's a little bit of time to onboard chunks into the CDN and then deliver them on the other side. So it's very typical to see latencies in the 30 to 45 second range of mobile versus broadcast. So that's why you see that, you hear the cheering, and then 30 seconds later you see, oh, a goal was scored. And that's what's going on there. And so that can be annoying when you have people on different devices watching. When you get money involved, you think, not so much in North America, but in APAC and in EMEA, you have online gambling that's legal. And so if you have playing card games or roulette wheels or different games or horse races and things like that, and you're betting online, latency is a killer. You need consistency of views from your audience. So here you're talking a monetary incentive here to try to solve this problem. So a couple of things that we should talk about. Flash has been the way with RTMP to deliver live video with low latency. But everybody's probably noticed over the last years, most of the major browser vendors have deprecated support of Flash. It's pretty much gone in support of most browsers. A lot of CDN vendors, because of that, have stopped supporting it as well. But we have found that there are still applications out there that especially some of the gaming houses use that still work with Flash, and users download a plugin to use it to get the low latency. So we continue to support that in the CDN through this transition. So what's happening is in the long run, there's technology out there that, basically based around WebRTC. This isn't the time to discuss the details of WebRTC. You can Google it and find out what it's about. But it's basically a way to bring HTML traffic down to the low latencies that you used to get and experience with RTMP and Flash. And there's lots of solutions out there. None of them are well established in the market yet, but they're coming. You'll start seeing at the end of this year and first half of next year, a lot of these solutions really start gaining traction. But in the meantime, there's interim solutions that are using chunk streaming with very short chunks. So instead of 10-second chunks, you can have 1 or 2 second chunks. This will work well as long as the networks are fairly clean with good bandwidth and so forth. So in some parts of the world, it'll work better than others. But there's a lot of successful customers now using small chunk size HLS to deliver, or HLS or Dash to deliver low latency streaming that's in about the 5-second range. So both of these things are bear watching over the next year or so, but very important with live, and sort of watch this space to see what happens. Video on demand is typically a lot simpler. Usually people have, if they were a movie channel or one of the thousands of OTT services out there, have libraries of some kind of video content. There's business decisions around whether they want to be the origin for that themselves for the CDN and store those files, or if they want them into the CDN themselves. So there's trade-offs on either way. There's storage costs, et cetera. And sort of the next slide, I'll sort of talk about options for storing in the CDN. But basically what happens here is the typical way you get this is MP4 renditions of the video files in a single bit rate, recommend the highest bit rate possible, and then we can translate that down to the various standard definition, high definition, ultra high definition, et cetera, and then do the transmuxing to either HLS or Dash. And so the other thing that's nice is the custom bit rates. So when you think about when you start delivering, do you want to have a high bit rate or a low bit rate or something in the middle? So it really depends on the region you're talking to. If you're in an area with very good network connectivity, you probably want to deliver starting at a high bit rate because your users probably are able to receive that. Because the idea here is you want their initial experience to be the best possible. So you don't want to start in a high bandwidth area with a low bit rate delivery with a suboptimal picture and then have it negotiate up to the higher bit rate. You want to start with the best chance of a good experience. So if there's good bandwidth, start with a high bit rate, and if you have to negotiate down, you do it. If you're delivering to an area that's known for poor connectivity, not a lot of 3 and 4G, but this area is even still running on 2G, you probably want to start with the lowest bit rate because that's probably the best connectivity they're going to see. And then if you can negotiate up, you do. And you can start anywhere in the middle. You have the options of high, low, and bandwidth in the middle. So again, the idea is try to give your audience the best possible experience as soon as possible and keep them engaged with your content. All right, let's talk about storage and specifically origin storage. So this is different than enterprise storage. This is different than typical cloud storage. CDNs often have a special kind of storage that's very tied in with the delivery POPs. So I'll go back to the video on demand example. You have, say, thousands of movie files. You don't know necessarily which ones are going to be popular. It costs money to store it in a CDN, naturally. So you may not want to install all your files in there. You may want to use the ones that are most popular. So the idea is the movies and so forth that you think are going to be the most popularly used, you can store in this origin storage, and you can store it near where your users are. So this reduces the latency of them requesting something and when it's delivered. So the idea is positioning this content as near to your users as possible. You also want to, this is also the opportunity to do backup. So you're not only storing it in one place, but you're storing it in multiple places. And the idea is, if there's any issue with anything in a network or storage, that there's an adjacent POP that probably has the same content in it that you can fetch from. So the idea is no matter what happens when they connect, there's always backups and other ways of getting the content to them. And the idea is get it to them fast, get them to start viewing it, keep them engaged with your site. So origin storage is something that's definitely worth looking at for on-demand content. Now, to get it in there, there's a couple of ingest options. Sometimes users just say, well, I know exactly what kind of content they want. They generate a manifest of that. They give it to their CDN vendor, and they use that manifest to pull the video out of their content and store it in the CDN network. The other is something that's basically market-based. Let's call it load on demand. So you don't know what content will be popular. You have it, your organization's origin, and as users start requesting the content, you use that as a basis for saying, wow, after a certain number of requests for the same movie, I'm going to move that into the cloud origin storage. And you just load it up that way. So you let the market demand for content determine what actually gets into the origin storage in the network. And so it just loads up automatically. As a number of people watch it, it remains popular, it stays loaded in ingest storage, in origin storage, and then users have rapid use of it. If it ever loses favor and goes out, then there's algorithms that say, if it stops becoming popular, you can take it out of there and save some money, and always keeping the popular content in. So those are the two options you typically see for getting that content in. So now the next thing we want to talk about is how do you measure them? How do you measure all this? How do you know what the performance is that your users see? How do you know how long they're engaged and so forth? So I'm going to turn it over to Mark at Nice People at Work to talk about the fantastic video analytics they can deliver. Take it away, Mark.
Thank you very much, Charlie. So as Charlie was saying, the main problem of content providers is that currently they lack a full end-to-end visibility on the user's behavior or how the whole platform is performing. Many of the challenges these content providers are facing and that can be overcome through business intelligence are the ones that you can see on this slide. I will go through each one of these one by one so quickly so you can get a full glimpse on that. But basically, it's important that you can predict which users are on the risk of churning and how they can abandon your service, and that can abandon your service. As you may know, winning a new customer is 7 times harder than keeping him. So it's important to get the most out of that acquisition effort. As I said before, monitoring your service and having full visibility of it allows you to keep full control of what's happening in your platform, what are your users doing, and then apply some changes or apply some actions that will let them have better experiences the next time they look at your videos. For ABOT services, ads are important. So understanding the behavior of your users when showing an ad and what's, for example, the best amount of ad impressions to maximize the revenues are important, and if the quality of those ads are also affecting the experiences that they're having. Moreover, in my experience in analytics, we have seen users leaving the ad because of being delivered in bad quality. So you have to make sure that the ad server is providing the best quality possible as well of an advertisement. And we all know that ad servers sometimes try to spend less money on bandwidth and then deliver the worst qualities. But then this is affecting your own service. So it's important to keep track of that as well. And right next to it, it's also important to make sure that any individual user complaint is tracked accordingly and also analyzed in a way that leads to a faster issue resolution if there is an issue, and in order to increase the customer engagement. So if I'm a user that I'm complaining because I cannot see a video and I'm calling the customer support, letting that team know what's happening with my views at that specific moment of time, and letting them know that I'm having issues and they know what the issue is and help me on resolving the problem. And this is something that will keep me more engaged with the service and the content as well. And also it's important to know how your service is performing according to industry levels. So if your competitors are taking your users away because they're giving better quality than that you can provide, it's vital that you stick around those quality standards when delivering the content, either if it's in mobile or in other kind of devices such as PC or desktop in this case. And finally, it's also interesting in terms of analyzing what's happening in your system, be able to do like precisely segmented multivariate testing, or AD&N testing, which is, that term refers to the possibility of being able to define experiments with your users that allow you to get better delivery results on them. Okay, so having a platform that allows you to create some segments of users, apply them some kind of experiments to them, and making sure that you apply the final changes once you have seen what the best scenario is, something that's good for your service. So which are the different metrics that I should be controlling? What are the key quality indicators that I should be taking care of? So the first one that we can see is the join time. And the join time is defined as the time it takes the player to start playing the content. Or going in a more technical definition in this case, is the time it takes the player to buffer the first segment of the player before it has enough content to start playing it. So join time is the first impression of your service to your audience. So you'd better keep it as low as possible, or that would cause a really bad impression. And according to NPAW data, connecting to a live stream is 3 times faster than with VOD. However, in mobile, that time is usually higher than in other non-mobile devices. And one way to improve it is to have a specific encoding profiles with lower bit rates on those devices. Moreover, if we take a look at the families of OSs, this is something that I'm going to go through throughout all the presentation, is that for it takes longer for iOS devices to join VOD content, but iOS is about 14% faster than Android when joining live events. Another metric or a consequence of that of the previous one that we have described that is related to the join time is what we call EBVS, or exits before video starts. These are the views that leave the session before the content starts, usually because the player takes a long time to load the content. The data collected by us indicates that the audiences for VOD content are more likely to exit their playback before it begins, around 135% higher than live content. This is because the effect of here and now in live, while in VOD, the content will be always available. For example, to put an example on the here and now effect, this is something that Charlie already said in the previous presentation, that basically imagine that if you're watching a football match or soccer for the American audience that we have here, you will likely want to see the goals being scored as soon as they happen instead of viewing them later in a VOD file. However, latency is also important because you won't be the first to watch them if the latency is high. However, depending on your content, you may see a low percentage of EBVS on VOD, and that may lead to a clear indicator that your audience is engaged to your content. So this is a pretty good sign in that case. And regarding mobile delivery, we see a fragmentation between the different OSs. While iOS users are 3 times less likely to have an exit before video starts compared to Android users. So that's because mobile video streaming applications for iOS have to deal with less parameters than Android, which has a greater device segmentation and many different players that can be integrated in the application. So for iOS, you can focus your encoding profiles and delivery to well-known devices that use common frameworks and code OS rather than using Android in this case. Another important metric, maybe it's one of the most important ones, is the rebuffering ratio. Okay, it's one of the most important key metrics to determine the quality of experience because it provides you the amount of time a user has installed on his playback experience compared with the session time. Okay, so overall, ratios of 3.96% for VOD and 2.29% appear if you look at the data that we have. But the most important thing that you should remember in this case is that rebuffering means that users will leave. This is also something that Charlie has seen in the data that Limelight has gathered. So if you have different, you're getting stalled many times when you are watching the content, or you stall for such a long time, then you will see that your users will be leaving your service. And actually, another consequence of this metric, which is interruptions, is what also Charlie was saying regarding the possibility that the users are leaving when they stall or they get stuck once or twice. Not only the rebuffering ratio is important, but also how many times you suffered, you get stuck during the experience. So it's just as bad to have a single interruptions of more than 10 seconds than as to have 10 interruptions of 1 second each where you hear the video stumbling. I'm pretty sure that in the audience, if you heard me like I was cracking while I was speaking, many of you would just disconnect from what I'm explaining. So that's not a good experience. It's similar as if I get stopped once for 10 seconds, I don't have and I lose 10 seconds of this amazing presentation that we're doing. So on average, live audiences suffer 77% more interruptions than VOD audiences, and Android usually faces 4 times more interruptions than iOS. And this is also because of the capabilities of some devices that are not powerful enough to keep up with encoding needs or the CPU needs that they need to decode the video for the end users. Another metric that it's interesting for us because it gives us information about engagement is the playtime. And the playtime is defined as a duration of a continuous video viewing session. So it gives you information about how much time your audience is consuming your content and their engagement. This metric has more value when it's correlated with the previous metrics that we discussed, such as the rebuffer ratio and the join time. So you can see how much less time the users watch your content depending on the buffer ratio that they experience. We, from our data, we usually see like an exponential decrease. This means that when we see that the buffer ratio increases a lot, then the viewing time decreases exponentially. So it's really important to keep the buffer ratio in order to increase the play time in this case. If we take a look at the data that we have for devices, in average, the playtime, VOD outperforms live on mobile devices because it's easy for the users to watch a content in the bus and then pause it and keep on watching it later than following up a live event in this case. While if we take a look at the OS of the device, iOS users watch content for longer duration in this case. And finally, the last KPI, the last metric that is interesting to evaluate is the bitrate. Basically, the bitrate is described as the amount of data transferred from the CDN server to the end user per second. But depending on the content resolution you have encoded your content, the need of a higher bitrate will be mandatory, so you don't see artifacts in the coded image. So it has a direct relationship between video quality, as I experienced it, and video delivery in this case. But for that reason, taking into account that mobile devices, either phones or tablets, have a lower screen resolution, then there is no need to have a highly encoded rendition or quality level. For example, you don't need the resolution of 1080p in a phone, or sometimes not even in a tablet in this case. Taking into account that, as Charlie was saying, that the mobile networks are unstable and unreliable, demanding lower bit rates provides some protection over network congestion and signal coverage handover as well. Because if I have some content downloaded while I'm switching to another 3G, 4G antenna, then I will be able to reconnect more easily and download more content for my player. Moreover, user streaming over mobile networks, its quality is usually related to the fact that they are limited to the speed they can download if they have exceeded their data commitment. So also, reducing this bit rate has the advantage that you will ensure that your users will watch more content because they will have more data available in their plans. And finally, for your information, NPAW data shows that the average bit rate for live in mobile devices is around 2.01 megabits per second, and for VOD it's 2.003 megabits per second. So they are pretty similar altogether. So we have been talking about a lot on how we can collect metrics and so on, but how does the business intelligence work? So this is the basic schema on how YOUBORA and, in consequence, a business intelligence tool works. So by getting data from the player and also the video application and sending it to a processing engine, we are capable to visualize different metrics or KPIs that will lead to take specific actions. Some of these actions will be coming from descriptive metrics, such as the buffering ratio, the join time, and so on, but others will be predictions that we can make on them, such as the user churn or network issues. If we are able to identify that, for example, we're seeing that in one CDN, the buffer ratio is increasing, or in one device, the buffer ratio is increasing, then this may lead to an issue or an important issue that you need to solve. And after having analyzed data, and you can see that some actions can be performed, this will lead you to new data that will provide some new insights to study in a later process. So this is a never-ending cycle that after you apply some actions into your service, then you get new data that provide you new insights. So additionally to the before mentioned metrics, there are other interesting metrics to evaluate. On this slide, you have a whole list of them, which we have split into between audience, quality, and engagement metrics. But usually, not only having the metric is important, you also need to have different dimensions such as geolocation, device information, content information, network information, which are required to analyze the behavior of a specific subset of users, either if you are using iOS or Android or any other device, for example, or who are located in completely different regions on the planet. Having those filtering dimensions in real time, and if you're able to combine them without any limitations, then you will have full control of your data, and you will be able to get as much data as you can in real time. And now I'm going to hand over the presentation to Charlie to continue with some metrics or some analytics that Limelight can also provide.
Well, thank you, Mark. So to complement what Nice People at Work can offer, our video platform offers metrics as well. So again, we see them in 4 groups: overview metrics, engagement, performance, and the way you viewed performance. So overview is pretty interesting. It's, most viewed videos, most shared, number of plays. You see drop-off data, playback milestones. Are they getting 25% of the way through, 50%, 75%? Number of views, time played, and on and on. If you need to monetize content, and and most people do, to be able to, advertisers are going to want to know this stuff. Who's on? They're going to want to know a lot about the demographics of this, how long they're watching. Critical, crucial data if you're trying to monetize content. So between what Nice People at Work can offer from looking in the network and what we can do in the platform, and then metrics you get from beaconing from the players, lots of useful data is available to you that you can use. So sort of as a conclusion before we get into the Q&A, and best practices is there's a lot of different mobile devices out there, between tablets, laptops, tablets, mobile phones, from the different vendors, different screen sizes, different content delivery bit rates. It's all over the place. So you have to be able to support any device your viewers are on. Depending on where, it could be global reach. You're just maybe trying to reach people in a particular country, but you need a network that can deliver no matter where people are. You have to be able to, now scale is different than reach. Scale is sudden people trying to watch, and you see this a lot in sporting events. When it gets down near the end of an event, scores are tied, or somebody's coming from behind, and all of a sudden social media explodes, the word gets out, and now lots of people in a short period of time trying to log on and watch. So that's what scale is. So you need to be able to do not only the reach, but be able to quickly scale and get people logged on when they want to. And again, of course, all the analytics stuff that we just talked about, so that you understand what's going on and can use that as part of your monetization efforts. So putting all these things together is what will allow you to have your best possible mobile experience for your audience. So we have some tools for you. So some resources. we jointly developed a white paper that talks about in more detail everything we mentioned today. That's available. So in another slide or two, we're going to show you a link to that. There's resources that you can download from the site. There's resources on our website all about mobile video. And a little bit quick, word from your sponsor here about Limelight and Nice People at Work. So Nice People at Work is a big data and business intelligence company. They're headquartered in Barcelona, Spain. You see the contact information and number there. And they have representatives in North America as well. They'll be more than happy to help you. And then Limelight, one of the top global delivery networks, we're really built for mobile and video. We carry all kinds of content, but definitely we're well known for our video and mobile media content. And so contact information there. Be more than happy to engage with you and talk to you about your video and mobile delivery issues and how we can help. Yeah, so right now what I want to do is I'm going to see if any questions have come in from the audience, and we'll start going through them. So Mark, I will sort of play moderator here. Let's see. You got the first question. So it says, Mark, in your presentation, you talked about getting predictive insights, or maybe I've read that somewhere. Where are you applying those insights, and what's the use case behind them?
Sure. Thanks, Charlie, for moderating. So these insights are applied in a module that we call Smart Users. And what we do with that is we get all the information about their trends, their consumption trends. We also get information about the quality of experience that they are receiving. And by correlating all this information, we're capable to provide with a 90% precision a probability of churning in the next 20, 30 days. This is something that we recently released in NAV in this case, and we have customers that have started using it in a beta program. And the results are pretty interesting because we are able to see which users you need to take care of so you don't lose them in the process.
Oh, okay, very good. Thank you. Let's see. Here's one about 4K video. I guess I'll take this. Just basically ask what my thoughts are on 4K for mobile viewing. Well, a couple of issues here. It's true that 4K in general is getting traction. You're seeing that on sort of on the OTT side. Netflix and Hulu and others have an option for 4K. They charge a premium for 4K content over high definition, but it's available. But one of the issues on mobile with that is, one is the small screen size. Well, I'm not sure what 4K really means when you're talking very small screen sizes. I'll concede that you could foresee when some of the larger tablets could possibly start approaching that. But the other issue with 4K, and this applies not only to mobile but just general usage on large screen TVs, et cetera, is just last mile connectivity and bandwidth. So 4K basically requires in the range of 20 to 25 megabits per second. It depends on the type of content. When you if you're watching a newscast and things aren't in motion, the bandwidth is less than. You have a sports event where cameras pan down the field and you see the audience in the background, and they'll have like score things going across the bottom. So there's a lot more bandwidth there. But just metrics I've been reading from, I think, Cisco about, globally in high bandwidth areas, average bandwidth in North America is just around 8 megabits per second. There's, odd pockets that are higher than that, but that's kind of average. Same is true in Europe. Small countries like South Korea have much higher bandwidth. It's easier to provide a lot of high bandwidth in a small geographic area than in very large countries. So there's definitely a correlation. So I expect over time, between much better compression algorithms and just network improvements, that over time last mile connectivity will go up. There's not going to be a big bang all of a sudden where there'll be dramatic increases of this, but it'll just start ramping up over time. Compression algorithms will get better, but I think it'll lag a little bit on the mobile side because the whole different issue with the last connectivity there and bandwidth. Let's see. Mark, another question for you. I want to know, is there a possibility in your product to try to understand how the video service we're delivering is performing against other quality measurements in the area? This is for my business. It's really important to understand if our quality metrics are inside of the expected standard ranges or not.
Yes, that's a good question, because as I have explained before, this is one of the most important problems of the industry these days. So answering the question on how do I perform in my territory is always vital for OTT providers and content providers that try to compete against Netflix or any other services in the region. In this case, since we have data from many customers, we have the possibility on providing a module where we can provide aggregated information on all the views in a specific region that watch content with a specific device or ISP. So you can filter all the information in real time and get the quality KPIs for your region. For example, if you are launching a service in Spain or in France, you're able to filter by that country. You're able to see the different ISPs, which are the ones that are performing best in terms of buffer ratio or in terms of join time or in terms of play failures, because that's also really important. And then if you are below or between those ranges, this is something that keeps you on the front line for being the first choice of your customers if your content is appealing to. So that's really important. And being more granular on that information, even knowing which are the most used devices, the most important OSs, can give operations teams information about, shall we develop an application for iOS 7? No one's using iOS 7 now, so what's the point in doing that and tackling that complexity, that development complexity? So these are the kind of questions that we can ask, and that for sure will not only help you on the quality of experience, but will also help you on your video strategy on the devices that you want to target.
Great, thank you. Looks like the next one is for me, dealing on OTT services. So basically asking me, just what about the OTT landscape? What does it look like? So I love this question. So I study this because I deal with video marketing. One thing I wanted to, 2 words for this, monetization and business model. So I wondered how many OTT services there were out there, because a lot of them are our customers. And the way I approached this was getting different lists like channel guides. So I thought, streaming devices that you use on TVs like Roku or Apple TV or Fire Sticks, they come with channel guides that you can go to online to find content. And then there's also third-party channel guides that you put in like a movie and it'll give you all the options for watching it or the types of content. And I just started downloading, looking at the kind of channels they supported, and just made a big spreadsheet for all the different services, the channels, deduped it. And I don't guarantee that I have 100%, but I'm at about 3,500 OTT services worldwide and counting. So another metric I'll throw out is when we asked about in our survey, how many subscription services do you have, specifically looking at OTT, typically what you find is they have one of the top 4. So the top ones are definitely Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, and then you have Viki and others, Vudu. So they'll typically have 2 or 3, 1, 2, or 3 of the top 5, and then they'll have 1 or 2 others. So it's pretty sobering to think about that. If there's 3,500 of them out there and the average person has maybe 5 at the most, the likelihood of all of these OTT services being able to monetize and be profitable and exist long term, certainly there'll be some consolidation and fallout coming. That's an awful lot. Those that find the best niches out there will win. Having a Me Too service that just offers the same kind of catch-up TV and movies as everybody else isn't going to cut it. So people are looking for these, undiscovered niches for content and trying to monetize around that. But it's really interesting to watch that, and I'll be keeping my eye on that over the next few years. But it's a sobering thing to think of that amount of services out there. Mark, another one for you. Said the other day, with my video service, we got a new player rolled out and into production, and that's good. And we had an increase of complaints. As you said, we were kind of blind on what happened. So a tool like yours could be interesting to have. But in the future, we'd like to know if we can predict if that change would affect in a positive or negative way. How can we measure that? I guess trying to figure out if they're rolling out a new player, what's the best practice for doing that and trying to avoid unanticipated issues?
Yeah. In this case, what we strongly believe is following a strategy like Netflix is doing, for example, in this case. So getting some subset of users and another subset of users and apply different conditions. That's actually one of the benefits of business intelligence. So being able to precisely segment those users into groups and then apply some experiments into them leads you to get more information on that behavior. For example, Netflix did this in order to test if the voting system was working in a way that had more users, that led to better recommendations with their recommendation engine, and they changed that. But in terms of analyzing the player's behavior and going into the specific question, for example, you can do also A/B testing to just, for example, imagine that you want to reduce the join time. So you have a join time which is very high, and then you say, okay, I want to see if this player or the other are better in terms of join time. So I will get a subset of users that I will send them always that specific player. I will get another subset of users that I will always send them to that other specific player, and then analyze the join times of those views. This is doing, in this case, what we call A/B testing, and then this allows you to see if that's better one player or the other. But you can do even more granular things. For example, and I'm giving you some tips and tricks right now. Imagine that you also want to reduce the join time, and then one of the techniques that you can do is, for example, force the player to start with the lowest bit rate in this case. But leading the user to the lowest bit rate will lead to less average bit rate. So the quality and the artifacts that can appear in the encoded file can be a little bit weird for those users. So maybe you can try different low bit rates, like 500 kilobits per second, 800, and 1 megabit, because we have seen that average bitrate is around 2. So let's reduce it by half in this case. Apply different tests and then see in which scenario you are able to maximize the bitrate while reducing the join time at its minimum value. This is something that will take you to not only correct one bad behavior for the join time, but also maximize the quality of experience. And doing this with players, it's really interesting because we have many customers that tell us that I want to try this player out, and it's a player with a version 0.x, but I heard that it's really good. Then just send it to a specific set of users and then compare the quality metrics from one case and another, and then decide if that player is good to go or if you should wait some more versions for it to be more mature.
Excellent. Thank you. That's good advice. Yes, we have one last question, and I think I'll take this one. It asks about professional sports leagues. It seems like they're always using third-party platforms when they stream, and some leagues have seems like they're sort of dabbling in streaming themselves. Like in the U.S., we have the NFL has their own video channel, et cetera. And why don't they just handle all this? Well, the answer is follow the money. It's just eye-popping to watch the broadcast rights here. You watch the leagues in Europe, the football leagues in EMEA, and the contracts that they get with the broadcasters to basically license and display the games. The streaming that's coming about is just grabbing more audience. If you're a network and you're paying billions of dollars to broadcast any of these events, you want to have the largest possible audience you can. So they not only have the broadcast audience, but they stream it out to get a few extra million users that way. And the money's too good. It's just amazing, the billions of dollars and the length of these contracts. Some of them go out 8-10 years, locking up these events. And my only assumption here is that the sports leagues assumed or just figured out they have the ability to broadcast these themselves, but they perceive that would not generate the kind of revenue they're getting from the big broadcasters. So it's purely a money issue. And I don't see anything that's going to change that anytime soon based on, the last round of negotiations for most of these leagues. So it's an amazing thing. So that's the last question. So basically, we're going to wrap up. So just the last housekeeping, everybody that attended is going to get an email. Also from this platform site, there's some content that was put up that you can download. So we made the slides available and a white paper available that this was based on. You're going to get a follow-up email with links also to that content. This has been recorded, so if you want to pass on that link to any colleagues of yours that didn't get a chance to watch this, they can watch it on demand later on because it's recorded. And also links to get to further content about mobile video on our different companies' websites, best practices, data sheets, solution briefs, etc. So we thank you for your attention today. I hope it was useful to all of you, and we look forward to having you on another webinar on a related topic sometime soon. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you very much, everyone, on behalf of Mark. Nice to see you here.